This is an audio tour of the sitting room of the Duldig studio. My name is Eva de Jong Duldig, and I am the daughter of Karl Duldig and Slava Duldig nee Horowitz. My parents and I moved into this house when I was a teenager, and after I married, they continued to live here for the rest of their lives. This room, our sitting room, was furnished and decorated by my parents. And although renovations took place in the mid-1990s, the placement of the art and the furniture, the rugs and the drapes have all remained largely unchanged. The furniture in this room is especially noteworthy. It was designed in Vienna in 1930 by Zygmunt Jare, a leading Viennese art house furniture designer and workshop. The work of this company is represented in Viennese museums, and they also won contemporary international awards. My mother, Slava Horowitz, collaborated with the architect at Zygmunt Jare to design and detail the furniture. She specified the red leather trim and the interwoven lattice backing design for the armchairs. The grey corduroy upholstered horsehair cushions are also original. These two unusual Circassian walnut stools with red leather upholstery match the armchairs. They were designed by my mother with the idea they should replicate a scroll. Other items from this collection include the circular occasional table, the square two-tier table on casters, a sketch of which is in the Duldig archives, and the unusual steel standing lamp with two lights up and down and the plaited red leather trim detailing on the handles. The photo on the table shows my mother seated in her armchair in the family apartment in Enzingergasse in Vienna in 1931. We had to leave Vienna in 1938, and all the furniture and works of art from the apartment were taken to Paris by my aunt, Aurélie Lenné, and they were hidden in the cellars of her apartment house throughout the war. Eventually everything, the works of art and the furniture, were returned to my parents in Melbourne. My parents admired the fine craftsmanship of antique furniture and quality rugs, and once they settled down in Melbourne after the war, they sometimes managed to exchange their work for some fine pieces. For example, this black lacquer Chinese cabinet from the 17th century Qianlong period was acquired by my parents from Joshua McClelland antique dealers of Collins Street in return for restoration work they did for the firm. A 1946 receipt in the museum archives verifies the repair work in return for the acquisition of the cabinet. The cabinet is a fine example of this period and is decorated with inlaid jade, ivory, agate, and mother of pearl, and stands on cast bronze legs. Looking closely at the bottom doors of the cabinet, it's possible to see there are a few new pieces of mother of pearl. When I was quite small, I remember looking for shells at St Kilda Beach, which was only a few minutes' walk from our flat in Acland Street. My parents cut up the shells into small mother of pearl pieces to match those on the cabinet and inserted them to repair the damaged corners. The outstanding sculpture in this room is Kneeling Figure, a carving in Salzburg marble, which was done by my father whilst he was a student of Anton Hanak in the early 1920s. It has often been exhibited, and its image is to be found in a number of significant publications. Salzburg marble is one of the hardest stones to carve, but because of its close grain, it can be hand polished to a high, glossy finish. My father said that after he finished the sculpture, he carried it home on the tram. Two unusual steatite carvings, Cascade and Head, are from the same period as Kneeling Figure. Steatite is much softer than marble, and therefore these sculptures were carved with a pocket knife. The students used to visit pharmacies in Vienna to find the best pieces of steatite, as it was sold there for people to use as an abrasive in their bathing. My mother's paintings and drawings in this room include a very early self-portrait, and next to it a pen and ink drawing of a tree. As the inscription in the top left-hand corner of the portrait shows, she was a schoolgirl, and it was done soon after her family arrived in Vienna in 1913. This self-portrait in pencil is more sophisticated, and like the oil portrait of a man, it was done around 1920 when Slava was a student at the Vienna College of Art for Women and Girls. Both works are still in their original frames. This fine watercolour still life of roses was done in Melbourne in the middle period of Slava's life. She had very little time to do much of her own work, as her responsibilities as a teacher at St. Catherine's and her commitment to her home and her family were all-consuming. This abstract multicoloured monoprint not only demonstrates Slava's ability to respond to the stylistic changes in 20th century art, but also shows how she constantly explored and experimented with different mediums and techniques. My father's drawings in this room span the whole period of his artistic oeuvre, beginning with an early drawing from his student days in Vienna. The ink drawing shows 4 views of one of his marble sculptures from the same period as kneeling figure. The sculpture itself, Spirit of Youth, is also in the collection and can be seen in the artist's studio. Carl did a number of drawings while we were living in Singapore in 1939 and 1940, and they are typified by his use of Indian ink and sometimes a quill pen. Carl was fascinated by the Indian women who walked around this Asian city carrying heavy vases on their shoulders or head. A lovely spontaneous drawing of my mother from 1942 shows her wearing a bandana. She was seldom to be seen without a head covering of some sort, often a scarf or a hat. In 1968, my parents made their only return journey to Europe. As well as visiting Vienna, they spent some time with my aunt, Aurélie Lenné, in Paris. This watercolour is an impression of Carl's recollection of a bride he saw in the well-known church of Sainte-Chapelle, which is renowned for its beautiful stained glass windows. At home, Carl was often inspired to use members of the family for his subjects in drawings, paintings and sculptures. I had 3 children, and this watercolour is of me with my oldest son, Anthony. A lovely watercolour of my oldest child, Tanya, who was about 4 years old at the time, is another noteworthy example of Carl's artistic response to his family to be found in this room. Sometimes Carl used his own sculptures as a subject for his drawings or watercolours. In this painting, he has used coloured inks as well as his favourite Rotring pen. This pencil sketch of a sculpture in a landscape setting is also of interest. It is an illustration of the small terracotta group sculpture Together, which, in the sketch, has been scaled up to life size to show how it would look in a streetscape setting. My father always hoped that small maquettes such as this one would be commissioned to life size for private or public patrons and could be placed in public outdoor locations.